Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show. Before I get on out of here, I had to talk about a story that's very, very important. And albeit indirectly, it involves...
The WNBA may have just detonated a self-inflicted shockwave that could haunt its future. A decision so reckless and ego-driven that it's pulled one of the most powerful voices in sports media into the spotlight to call it out. Stephen A. Smith has reportedly validated what many feared. Caitlin Clark, the generational force fueling women's basketball's surge, has allegedly been sidelined by league leadership, not for misconduct, not for performance, but for standing her ground against a collective bargaining framework viewed as restrictive to her impact. If true, this isn't discipline. It's defiance meeting authority head-on. This is the league challenging its own most valuable catalyst, and the consequences could be severe. Smith has spent months warning that internal politics, and rigid gatekeeping were clouding judgment, urging veterans and executives alike to recognize and protect a once-in-a-lifetime asset. Now, his message has evolved from caution to confirmation, signaling that the tension has escalated beyond chatter and on-court clashes into serious negotiations behind closed doors. If the league miscalculates here, it won't just lose a moment, it could lose momentum, leverage, and trust on a scale that's impossible to ignore. The claim making waves is that the league attempted to pressure Clark into a revised labor add-on or tightly framed agreement that would curb her independence, potentially touching her major endorsement freedom or outside competitive opportunities. And when she declined, leadership allegedly reached for punitive authority. If accurate, this wasn't negotiation, it was a high-stakes power move fueled by urgency. To understand why this flashpoint exists, you have to examine the WNBA's financial crossroads. The Players Association recently exited the current labor deal seeking higher pay, improved travel standards, and a larger share of league revenue. And the surge in that revenue has a clear catalyst. Before Clark's arrival, major broadcast dollars were elusive. After her emergence, the league secured a landmark multi-billion-dollar media agreement spanning more than a decade. Logic would suggest celebration and protection of that engine, yet reports imply an effort to confine it instead. The supposed terms would push top-tier players to center their entire professional calendar around the league, sidelining lucrative off-season paths. Clark, operating with the clarity of a seasoned executive, likely recognized the imbalance immediately. Why accept rigid limits and a capped salary when her market value multiplies beyond them? Her answer wasn't just refusal. It was a firm statement of control over her own career. And that kind of independence rattles a league structured around tight control. Because this situation goes far beyond paperwork, it feels like the peak of a season-long buildup of resistance. From the instant Clark entered the draft conversation, the tone shifted. Subtle jabs turned into public skepticism. Comments that once sounded like competitive bravado now read as warnings in retrospect. And respected figures appeared to stretch facts just to downplay her accomplishments. That atmosphere didn't appear overnight, and it wasn't shut down either. Throughout the year, league leadership faced mounting criticism for passive optics, uncomfortable silences, and a failure to step in decisively when tension spilled onto the court. Now, if a suspension truly stems from a contractual standoff, it reinforces the most troubling interpretation yet, not of authority being exercised, but of authority being compromised. Instead of steering the league forward, the commissioner would be signaling that internal pressure from entrenched voices outweighs vision, growth, and fair leadership, forcing a generational talent to wait her turn in a moment when the league can least afford to stall its own momentum. This is where the narrative turns even darker and more revealing, because a new rival league is waiting in the wings, offering everything the WNBA won't: real money, real respect, and real ownership. That emerging platform is reportedly dangling six-figure minimums, equity stakes, and star-first treatment, and the league knows exactly what that means. Caitlin Clark has options. There's growing concern that she could delay her WNBA participation or fully commit elsewhere, choosing an environment that actually matches her value. Instead of adapting, the WNBA appears to be reacting with fear, attempting to slam shut a door that's already been torn off its frame through restrictive clauses and alleged punishment. Stephen A. Smith has hinted at this anxiety plainly. The league doesn't control players the way bigger organizations can, because the financial leverage simply isn't there. When an athlete's personal brand outweighs institutional power, authority collapses fast. That collapse is being fueled by something even more corrosive: envy. It's unprecedented for a league to undermine its most magnetic figure, especially when history offers a clear blueprint. The NBA embraced Jordan, empowered LeBron, protected its icons, and built empires around them, understanding that star power elevates everyone. The WNBA, by contrast, seems to be pushing its brightest force away, and that contradiction is at the heart of this unfolding disaster. They've allowed a damaging storyline to spread that Clark is somehow favored or undeserving, and that mindset has seeped straight into the league's decision-making circles. If the suspension talk holds any truth, it would be the clearest example yet of a system trying to cut down its brightest force simply for standing tall. The veteran power structure within the union appears to want compliance above all else, pressing leadership to force Clark into line with the collective. But that logic collapses under reality. She isn't just another participant, she's the engine driving the entire operation. The timing couldn't be more reckless. The league's momentum is real but fragile, built on soaring viewership, packed arenas, and explosive merchandise demand, all of which trace back to one undeniable catalyst. Removing her, even temporarily, would be the equivalent of torching the very revenue stream the league is celebrating. Major partners didn't commit massive resources for quiet, low-impact matchups. They invested in visibility, energy, and star power. As Stephen A. Smith has emphasized, those partners expect the centerpiece to be on the stage, and any move that sidelines her risks turning unprecedented growth into a self-inflicted collapse. They invested in the highlight shots, the deep-range brilliance, and the viral moments that only Clark delivers, which is why any suspension would feel like a direct betrayal of both fans and financial partners. Since these rumors surfaced, the online reaction has been explosive, with calls for boycotts, canceled subscriptions, and widespread frustration dominating the conversation. The Indiana Fever, now effectively a national draw, risk empty seats the moment Clark isn't on the court, and the league appears to be misreading the loyalty of its new audience. These aren't long-established followers bound to the league's legacy. They're supporters who followed Clark from Iowa and came for her, not the logo. Remove the reason they tuned in, and they won't protest, they'll just move on. The confidence it takes to believe the brand can withstand sidelining its central figure borders on delusion and reflects a stunning disconnect from market reality, one Stephen A. Smith has been warning about for months. That same mindset was visible earlier with the Olympic roster decision, when Clark was left off under vague explanations about experience and chemistry, a move widely seen as protecting an existing hierarchy. Taken together, that moment now looks less like an isolated decision and more like a preview of the power struggle unfolding today. That Olympic exclusion already cost the league millions in global visibility, and this alleged suspension feels like the same pattern repeating with far higher stakes. It's the establishment shielding itself at the expense of forward momentum. Missing a global tournament was a missed opportunity. Sidelining a full season over a labor standoff would be catastrophic, reinforcing every argument that the league wasn't prepared to manage a true superstar moment. It feeds the perception of small thinking and reactive leadership at the exact moment professionalism is required most. Stephen A. Smith has also addressed the uncomfortable double standard shaping this saga, noting how similar behaviors are framed differently depending on who displays them. What's praised as fire or competitiveness in some is scrutinized or punished in others. A suspension tied to contract resistance looks less like neutral governance and more like selective pressure, raising serious questions about consistency and fairness. The optics are brutal. It appears as though the league is attempting to humble its most visible figure to quiet criticism, while in reality subjecting her to harsher treatment than virtually any top draft pick before her. And that's why leverage matters here, because Clark's power doesn't just come from popularity. It comes from options, including a rising off-season league that offers flexibility, respect, and real economic freedom, shifting the balance away from control and toward choice. That Olympic exclusion already cost the league millions in global visibility, and this alleged suspension feels like the same pattern repeating with far higher stakes. It's the establishment shielding itself at the expense of forward momentum. Missing a global tournament was a missed opportunity. Sidelining a full season over a labor standoff would be catastrophic, reinforcing every argument that the league wasn't prepared to manage a true superstar moment. It feeds the perception of small thinking and reactive leadership at the exact moment professionalism is required most. Stephen A. Smith has also addressed the uncomfortable double standard shaping this saga, noting how similar behaviors are framed differently depending on who displays them. What's praised as fire or competitiveness in some is scrutinized or punished in others. A suspension tied to contract resistance looks less like neutral governance and more like selective pressure, raising serious questions about consistency and fairness. The optics are brutal. It appears as though the league is attempting to humble its most visible figure to quiet criticism, while in reality subjecting her to harsher treatment than virtually any top draft pick before her. And that's why leverage matters here, because Clark's power doesn't just come from popularity. It comes from options, including a rising off-season league that offers flexibility, respect, and real economic freedom, shifting the balance away from control and toward choice. The silence says everything. They're trying to control the narrative, and the lack of clarity only reinforces the belief that Stephen A. Smith is hitting uncomfortably close to the truth. Behind closed doors, this looks less like confidence and more like damage control, a scramble to figure out how to soften a situation they know could explode publicly. An official suspension tied to contract resistance would instantly flip the league into the role of antagonist, prioritizing bureaucracy over the very growth they claim to champion. So the likely strategy is delay, quiet talks, and hope that Clark backs down, but history suggests she won't. She's built her career under pressure and responded by leveling every barrier placed in front of her. There's also a serious legal dimension here, because punishing a player for rejecting terms that restrict her independent opportunities raises questions no league wants aired in public. Players retain rights to their own identity and brand, and attempting to overreach into that territory invites scrutiny no amount of spin can survive. Clark has elite representation, and any prolonged dispute risks opening doors the league would rather keep sealed, exposing internal decision-making and behind-the-scenes maneuvering that could permanently damage its credibility. Stephen A. Smith has suggested this alleged suspension could be the spark that burns the entire structure down, finally exposing the coordinated resistance against Clark that many believe has been brewing all along. The irony is brutal when you consider the league's non-stop "grow the game" messaging. They pleaded for attention, investment, and relevance, and the moment a player delivers all of it effortlessly, the response appears to be restriction instead of recognition. That contradiction reveals the real issue. Growth was only welcome if it came from familiar faces and stayed within comfortable boundaries. Clark isn't comfortable for the establishment. She disrupts styles, expectations, and audiences, and disruption terrifies systems built on control. Rather than adapting, leadership seems willing to undermine its own breakthrough moment just to preserve hierarchy. That same short-sightedness has plagued the league's marketing all season, as genuine rivalries were mishandled momentum was allowed to turn toxic, and demand for Clark-driven merchandise consistently outpaced execution. Instead of riding the wave, the league stumbled at every turn, turning opportunity into self-inflicted damage. They couldn't even scale venues fast enough to handle the crowds, and this rumored suspension now looks like the latest chapter in a pattern of operational misfires that expose a league struggling to act like the major enterprise it claims to be. As Stephen A. Smith has repeatedly argued, this isn't a talent problem, it's a leadership problem, and billion-dollar momentum cannot be managed with small league thinking. Targeting Clark would represent fear, not authority, a reaction from decision-makers unsettled by the change she symbolizes rather than empowered by it. The damage extends far beyond one player, because the message sent to the next generation is chilling. Excellence doesn't earn protection, impact doesn't guarantee fairness, and standing out invites resistance. Clark has motivated millions of young athletes to believe in possibility, and sidelining her through boardroom maneuvering drains that belief of its magic, reducing the sport to cold calculation instead of inspiration. The league has a responsibility, not just commercially, but morally, to showcase the best basketball and honor the spirit of competition, and any move that removes its brightest force from the floor isn't just bad business, it's a betrayal of the game itself. The so-called CBA refusal feels less like the real issue and more like a convenient cover for what this is truly about: control. At its core, any labor agreement defines power between workers and management, and Clark represents a level of leverage this league has never had to confront. That imbalance clearly makes leadership uncomfortable, because it challenges the outdated idea that players should simply comply. The attempt to reassert authority looks like a reminder that she's just an employee. But modern sports doesn't work that way anymore. Elite stars are strategic partners, not interchangeable parts, and the NBA figured that out long ago. The WNBA, by contrast, appears stuck in an old mindset that expects obedience instead of collaboration. Clark isn't defiant, she's informed. She understands her value, recognizes a bad deal when she sees one, and refuses to diminish herself for the sake of appearances. Her decision signals confidence and intelligence, while the league's reaction signals insecurity. Even Stephen A. Smith's reporting hints that not everyone inside the system agrees with this approach, suggesting internal cracks forming as leadership struggles to adapt to a new reality they can no longer control.